welcome everyone. So I'm going to start with this individual here. Introduce yourself, talk about who you are, what big data means to you, and we'll go down the line with our panels, and we'll continue to get into the Q&A.
So my name is Zach Erlacher. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at a company called Zendesk, or a cloud-based help desk company. We have 10,000 customers. And prior to that, I was an EIR at Scale Ventures, looking into the area of big data and NoSQL for a few months, trying to understand what's going on in that world. I'm not sure I really made any sense of it, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. And for 7 years prior to that, I was at MySQL running engineering and marketing. So I have a little bit of a bias towards SQL, but just it's interesting to see the trends of what's getting adopted. Maybe we'll get into that again. Did anyone notice that Amazon was down? Did anyone fail to notice? Yeah. And I think that actually says something interesting. It speaks to how widely adopted Amazon and other services are that we actually pay attention to this. And you know, Zendesk wasn't affected directly by this. We happened to be, coincidentally, we're at Rackspace and, you know, kept our fingers crossed, we were fine. But it does remind me of a few years back when Salesforce had a big outage, or a series of outages for a couple of days. eBay had some massive outages periodically. I think as an industry this happens on occasion. You know, I'm sure there's things that Amazon will figure out to do better here. And I actually think it's just kind of normal evolution of the technology. And despite the outages that Amazon had last week, I still actually think that performance is probably better than you could get from any homegrown data center. And you know, I was using Salesforce back when I was at MySQL for many years. It was a hell of a lot better uptime than we would have ever had ourselves from our little IT department in Sweden. And that was one of the reasons we went to Salesforce. And I think probably, you know, as painful as it is to have downtime, I think it's tough to avoid that. And the thought that, well, we'll bring it on ourselves and we'll do it in-house and we'll do better than Amazon, that's a tough proposition.
So you're going to just have to be a lot smarter and we probably pay Amazon more money.
Brother, what do you think?
No, I think that's a great point. And I think you know, you need to educate your customers on failover availability, right? Yes, they have to pay more, right? But I think if they're running a revenue generating business on Amazon, right, then I think we should advise them to it. We don't want that to be impacted.
Do we get smarter in 2012? When right now companies are just like, oh, I'm going to throw it out in the cloud and it's all going to be okay. Do we get smarter in 2012? Do these instances that change things? Mike, you want to say something?
I'm sure we get smarter. I mean, I agree with Zach. I think growing pain sounds like you're sloughing it off, but I think it is. I mean, nothing's going to work magically perfectly 100% of the time as the entire universe moves over to adopt it as a platform. I think their uptime is pretty wide. We run on Amazon. We run our data on Amazon. We have hundreds and hundreds of customers in production every hour. We have to choose the multi-region option exactly to avoid these kinds of
Yeah, so I think it speaks to the sophistication that you guys have.
Exactly, and that's what you were asking. Are people going to learn? Sure, this is organic evolution, if you will. In fact, it's a good lesson. I bet you everybody scrambles and scurries, and including Amazon, by the way, will try to improve their uptime. But failure is part of life. Every system you pick will fail for the rest of the time at some interval. So you have to cope with your solution architecture, your own business plans have to live in that kind of world.
At Zuora, we run mission critical billing. We run millions and millions of transactions per day across the world. We have disaster recovery, we have remote data store, we have all the mechanisms in place to ensure that we do have failover, because as Jeff said, depending on the type of application that you're servicing out there, you need to make sure you have the proper infrastructure, the proper security, the proper disaster recovery to ensure that your customers are not affected.
Yeah, I think Salesforce did a great job on that, and a lot of companies like Zendesk, we've taken a page out of Salesforce's book, and we have a page, Uptime, and it publishes our uptime data every month. And if customers ask us about our SLAs, we just refer them to that page. It's like, okay, last month it was 100%, the month before it was 99.9 something. And then they make their own assessment, and we record everything. But what I want to know is, when Salesforce went down, is it a database issue? That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
I don't know what database they're using. Anyway, so
we see something really interesting in this area. So at Zendesk, we have 10,000 customers. We're dealing with 150,000 tickets or support incidents a day. And there's some big companies using it like Groupon or Twitter or OpenTable, and there's small companies. But one of the interesting byproducts is by having a cloud-based service, is we can actually benchmark people's performance. And we ask people, if they want to opt into this and share their data, and in return, they get to see how are they doing relative to their peers in terms of responsiveness or the efficiency of their agents, et cetera. And we haven't commercialized this in any way yet. We're just collecting the data at this stage. But people seem very interested in seeing how they're doing. And it's interesting because the people who are making those decisions are probably most commonly director of customer service or departmental manager. They're not going to the CIO and saying, hey, do you mind if I share my data with someone else?
So the departments are getting away
Yeah,
with
the
this.
departments are just fine, and they're the ones who benefit from it. Because, much like if you go to a conference and you say, well, hey, my customer service reps respond this way and deal with this. How's that working for you? Am I in the ballpark? And really helping people achieve more of the best practices in the industry. And our view is, it's totally up to the customers if they want to be involved in this. But it's an interesting byproduct that creates more value than if you were just running these applications on premise, where you probably couldn't get that data in any kind of aggregate form that's meaningful.
But as has already been said, there's a great opportunity to build new data, new businesses around these data feeds. It's really what we're talking about now is someone exposing the notion of an interest graph. When people give you a small bit of information, and then you aggregate that with a bunch of other small pieces of information, and what you end up is just like in a social graph, you can map out people's connections to other people. You can actually deal with interests as well.
Right. I think this is one of the areas that's really causing the explosion of big data, because it used to be everything was all in database land. It's all about the transaction. You're running an ERP system, and at the end of the day, you've got a transaction that runs, an employee gets an adjustment, or something gets bought, or something gets sold. And now, the interesting data is all around that transaction. It's click streams, it's comparisons, and then looking for patterns in that data that may not be obvious and were not there, and you didn't know what the patterns were. In the traditional database management, it's like you create schemas and you understand more or less what you're looking for to begin with. Now when you get into this terabyte, petabyte level of data, it's a whole different ballgame in terms of doing analysis, and I think that's part of why there's so much interest in big data and different approaches to data management today.
So to this point, I don't, so patterns and predictive analysis is going to be really important, right? To make use of this data. I don't think the technology there has caught us yet. We have a lot of data, we aggregate it, we find it, we visualize it, but the technology is not caught up to be able to say that, with this data, can the data predict things for me? Can the data predict operations for me? Can the data predict buying patterns for me? I think that's sort of the next area in this whole realm of big data.
What are the top data sources you're seeing? What does mobile fit with this and social data? Does that change things in terms of this information services that people are putting on top?
I think social data has been, really out of the air. There from, you have companies like SaaS and IBM and all these large predictive analytics and big data companies that are, targeting whole products around social data now. I mean, it's a huge deal, I think. It's streaming constantly.
Well, and I think the other thing is there's just a ton of companies, a ton of situations where data is being generated by machines, whether it's your cell phone and roaming data. Twitter is sort of like a machine, it just keeps pumping out data. But there's going to be more and more sensors out there creating more and more data. And companies I talk to in this space who are consuming this data, they're dealing with 10 to 50 terabytes of fresh data per day. I mean, it's so far off the charts of what you can deal with in a traditional data warehouse or relational database. You have no choice but to say, okay, I got to use Hadoop or Cassandra or something else in that area, because the volume is just massive.
Specifically for your customers as to why they're coming to you, because at some point, the individual organization probably won't be able to do this on their own. It sounds like a lot of it is coming from external tools and scale and automation.
Yeah, there's an interesting trend also, which is, if you think of SaaS applications, historically we thought of those as, you put up your SaaS application and you're done. And the reality is you actually have to integrate with a lot of other things. A SaaS application is really not an island. And I think Pervasive does a lot of really good work in terms of helping people either migrate or integrate their data sources into the equation. Zendesk, we have like integrations with 70 different applications, whether it's Salesforce or NetSuite, et cetera. A lot with, we work with Good Data, who are here today, to basically provide reporting. And there's kind of an interesting phenomenon, which is if somebody's using Zendesk and Good Data, well, now they can actually start to do data mashups across other SaaS applications. And your data is actually already up in the cloud, which is interesting, makes that possible. And increasingly, customers are saying, you know, I've had it with the on-premise solution. We have some customers, very, very large customers who probably spent millions on on-premise software over the last 10 years, taking care of their customers and whatnot. And it's like the last thing in the world they want to do is spend another $500,000 in consulting fees to customize this stuff. And now they're saying they have this view of, you know, we have this just-in-time approach. We're going to spin up another help desk or customer service system, whatever. We're going to use Zendesk for this. Forget all that old legacy stuff. That's for our old stuff. And strategically saying, we are moving to the cloud. Maybe they move their CRM to the cloud with Salesforce, or maybe their financials with NetSuite. Talk to companies who have 70 applications, you know, Fortune 500 companies, 70 applications they run their business on. 24 are now running in the cloud. Now they're moving to number 25. And just being methodical about doing that and just getting out of this, you know, the old pain we used to all have with Siebel and Oracle Financials and all these other things, like, you know, it takes you a year to implement it. If you're lucky, you roll it out. By the time you do, everyone hates it. Spend $2 million, you know, SAP, all this crazy stuff, and people are just saying, you know, Amazon works pretty good. Facebook works pretty good. You know, why can't I get that kind of web-based experience in my enterprise applications?
So Raghu, you saying the same thing? Cloud efficiencies, are you saying?
You know, I'll put it this way, I mean, when people from the Midwest are calling me about cloud, I know cloud is alright. So, you know, we used to put in calls to all these CIOs and CTOs out there, you know, they were, you know, so hands-off about the cloud, you know, didn't really get it. Now they pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, you know, I have this application on this vertical, right? And how can NetSuite help me get in the cloud? You know, verticals that were unheard of before, right? You know, we sold everything to software and wholesale. Now we have all these manufacturing, subset of manufacturing. We have CPG people calling us. So there's a whole host of industry, right, that's out there that's waiting to move to the cloud. People see the value of the cloud, right? People see the efficiencies, right? You know, the cloud brings to the table. They don't want to be stuck in this on-prem world where they have to do every single thing, where they're, you know, locked in version control modes, right? The applications are not forward or backward compatible, and you come to the cloud, you know, Zendesk happily migrates up with NetSuite, NetSuite happily migrates up with Zuora, right? So we all give them.
Are you one big happy family?
You know, we are. I mean, we do compete.
Absolutely.
We are one big happy family, right? I mean, you know, if you think about it, right? I mean, I think that we all have open APIs. You know, I think, you know, the cloud is efficient, right? I mean, I think we proved it, you know, across a couple of industries, and I think more and more industries are coming to us.